Hi, my name is Eric Bubble. I sometimes go by the name of Simon, and welcome to what essentially is another complaints video. If you have clicked on this video, I do apologize. I am not going to be able to give you sound financial advice as to why Magic the Gathering is not an investment. That is for other channels to do so. I more just want to tell my story and kind of get all my thoughts off my chest into just a record. Um, if you have looked at the channel before, you'll have noticed I post extremely infrequently. And it's generally just because something has popped in my head and I really want to get it out of my brain. So, with that being said, I kind of want to tell my story about Magic the Gathering. Ever since the Spider-Man set came out, and I know now is the kind of the best time to talk about that kind of stuff. Magic to me feels like a frustration. It feels basically dead, or it spiritually dead is probably the best way to put it. Still, it's a product everyone has, everyone can play it, all that kind of good stuff. But I don't think my kids are going to be playing Magic the Gathering. And I think what ultimately ends up being a 50-year game is going to disappear relatively quickly. So, let me kind of start off by saying where I came from. I started when I was 18. I ended up picking up Lorwyn. It was just before end of high school. We ended up getting a few cards. Actually, the only card I literally have left of my collection is a card from Lorwyn. It's the 4th Vet Trio. And I love the setting. I love the Kifkin. I love the Elemental deck that I had. I had a Warrior deck that I made. I remember going to the local game shop and opening up the rare binder, and they had a couple of cards that I was like, oh, this is perfect. I remember the combo of putting Rune Stalactite on a Kifkin Braveheart that turned him into a giant, so then he qualified for the same ability. It was great. Got a couple of friends to start playing, and we kind of went from there. Then university happened, and I took a step back, and I came back in Zendikar. Again, really loved the Zendikar set, loved the story, the shifting world of adventurers. I loved Allies. Allies was my favorite. I remember my ally deck with Rite of Replication, which allows you to make like 6 copies of something. And so I'd ramp into it and then just completely mill people out or summon a horde of creatures. Again, great time. But I was also in university, so I didn't have a lot of money. And over time, I started thinking, what was a better way of investing or getting into Magic? And I ended up getting the dual decks. I figured out that I could get 4 of the same dual decks, and I would have a pretty decent deck to be made from that. So I could take all the crappy commons out or crappy cards out and just keep the rares, or basically just fine tune the deck, so to speak. And it also meant that I could then, if my friend wanted to play, I could just be like, hey, here you go. Here's the deck we can play together, it'll be fun. Over that time, I was still doing things like attending pre-releases, which was a good time, and also doing the occasional draft, the limited format at the local game shops when I had a chance. But ultimately, I was trying to keep an eye on my expenses. I didn't have a lot of money. After high school, after university, I should say, after university, that's when I started to really started to kind of notice issues with the game. I was going up against friends who had invested a lot more money into the game, had more cards, had better decks, and basically the ones that I was using were terrible. They did not match up at all, and it ultimately ended up. It doesn't matter how good I was at the game. It was ultimately dependent on who had the most money. My friend went hard and got a whole bunch of the Shark clans, especially as Return to Ravnica was happening. Um, and I just didn't. I still had my tool decks, which occasionally would win me a game, if not. And then something interesting happened. In 2014, my friend showed me Agricola, which was a board game, hence the background, as you can kind of see. And from there, it made no sense to continue on with Magic, right? Here's the thing about a board game. It is designed to be played with either one person against one person or with multiple people. But also, it's fairly balanced and contained. Yes, you have to know different rules for different games, but ultimately, you're playing on an even playing field, and you can get a game that's tailored to what you want to do. If you want to have a game that is more about skullduggery and intrigue and lying to your friends, then you can find a game for that, things like The Resistance. If you want like a grand strategy time, like you're playing Commander, then something like Twilight Imperium is fantastic for it. If you wanted a really good two-player game out there, like there were things like the Unmatched series. Let me find it. There we go. But ultimately, I ended up figuring out that it was just way easier to get a game that I knew everyone would have an equal time playing, and it would feel good. I should point out that I'm not a competitive person. I never really enjoyed going to my local game shop and playing in standard or even modern. When my friend gave me one of his decks to try out for a while, it just felt didn't feel great. I mean, ultimately, because I was playing with strangers, people I didn't know, and I'm the one that feels very like self-conscious if I make a mistake or if a judge came over to me and I did something wrong and then I lost a match for it. I think it happened once, but also that was with Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, and the person scape shifted, and I was pretty sure he didn't have enough lands, but because Valakut counted itself, anyway. The point being, I just didn't enjoy myself when it came to the local game shop scene. But I did enjoy playing Magic with my group of friends. So I ended up cutting, I think I had to do my honors year and I needed a lot of money. And I ended up selling my dual deck collection. And I had some pretty good cards. I had like 4 copies of Jace versus Chandra and Liliana versus Garuk. So I had like 4 demonic shooters, 4 ancestral recalls. I had a decent amount of money. I managed to get them all sold. And that money then carried me through the year doing my honors. But I never really then returned to Magic in its fullest. I tried twice. Once when my friends kind of started picking up Commander in 2021, and before then when MTG Arena came out. That was during I'm trying to think now, that was during the Return to Ravnica set. And I kept it for a while, but eventually it came down to the same thing of like I did not want to spend the amount of money I was spending to keep up with the game, especially in a digital format where you didn't own anything. And over that whole course of time, I was just getting more and more into board games. Half my collection, as you can see behind me, is still around. And then the last few years, I've been noticing like the universes beyond stuff happening, where the lack of story and the lack of meaningful lore building coming out of the game really was hurting any excitement of me ever returning. Even the things like Edges of Eternity, which looks incredible. It was one of those things where like it did not make any sense to me why I would be paying that amount of money for a product. A good example I saw was someone opening up a Bloomberg collector's pack, which goes for about $75. For $75, I can get like 3 versions of some of my games. I can get like half my Unmatched collection or I could get 2 of my Great Western Trail games. And then I saw a lot more unopening, unboxing, unpacking, or pack openings. And it sort of realized on me that kind of thing that people were saying was like, well, this, is this a good investment? And or like, is it worth buying the set? Like, I know the new Spider-Man has just come out, and everyone was spending like what, $600 for a box, and or higher, and now it's dropped to far below that. And it just didn't make sense to me, because at that point you're not treating Magic as the game it is. You're treating Magic as, well, essentially stocks, right? You like, there's the only excitement for the game ends up being how much a card is worth, and that feels bad to me, right? I'm very much the firm believer of games should be games for gaming purposes, right? You're supposed to have fun with them. I mean, you see this a lot now with the Pokemon craze, where you just have massive scalpers, and I don't think there's even a scene to play Pokemon anymore unless you're like 12 years old. I don't know. Maybe that's a really bad hot take. But ultimately, it strikes me very odd to look at a card and be like, oh, that's a really cool card, but it's $90. Why am I going to spend that $90? Oh, well, you can play it, and then you can play it, and then in 5 years' time you can sell it for a fortune. And it's like, okay, cool, but also, can you? There's a very good likelihood that the card is not going to be worth that. Things like the Shocklands, especially, are like modern investments because you can play them in so many decks and swap them out, and ultimately you have to find someone that can then buy it from you. I'm in South Africa, and we have a good local card scene, but you don't have the wealth of people who are willing to buy on eBay or things like Card Kingdom or that kind of stuff that are easily available. So ultimately, you're not going to be able to recoup your losses. I was very lucky to sell my dual deck collection, but that's because I asked for a very low price compared to what it was worth. I think I asked for like half of what it was actually worth. And I had some really chase cards in that collection. But if you're spending so much money nowadays on Magic, are you really going to get your monies back? But also, why do you want to spend money on Magic just to get money back? You're better off playing the stock market, as crazy as it is at the moment. You're better off investing your money into other things, because if you're not using the cards to play with, what are you doing with them? They're just a stock option they're a stock option with pretty pictures. That's essentially what it comes down to. So, with that all being said, I want to kind of persuade a few people to say, like, hey, if you are playing Magic but you're not sure about investments and you don't care about money, there are other options out there. I've kind of already listed a few of them. Unmatched, for example, is an amazing set of products. If you're looking for a 2-player card game with amazing artwork that feels good to play, then you can't go wrong with Unmatched. If you're looking for another 2-player card game, something like Compiled feels really good as well. And again, it's balanced. It is completely fair. You're not going to get screwed over by lands. You're not going to get dunked on because your friend spent another $100 on one card just to make that deck better to play against you. I could purchase my entire collection of Twilight Imperium for $300. The whole collection, or just about of it, which is a massive game. We're talking a game that takes like 6 to 8 hours to play, that can go up to 8 players. It has everything. It has a story to it, it has lore with it. You get plastic components, little miniatures that you can move around. It feels good. And for me, I would rather have that and never play it and just have it be something in my collection than a set of cards that could maybe go up in price, that can be resold eventually. Yeah, man, Magic just isn't doing it for me. Oh, by the way, if you do like Universes Beyond, and you're thinking, well, why would I want to invest into something like Unmatched? Well, they have the Witcher series. They have Marvel. Hey, they have Spider-Man. They have Deadpool. They have sets that you might like. They have Shakespeare, for God's sake. It's cool. Ultimately, I rarely am concerned. Magic felt like this sort of like omnipresent thing in the gaming scene, or in the nerd scene, I probably should say. It felt like a thing that would stick around for a long time. And I understand a lot of people that come in because of like IPs like The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Final Fantasy doing really well and attracting people and people getting into it. But for every like hit that you have of the highest highs with Lord of the Rings, you ultimately get the Spider-Man that feels like it has no connection to what you're doing. For fuck's sakes, you had the New York Spider-Man set, you're gonna have the Marvel New York set, and am I forgetting another one? I feel like I'm forgetting another. Oh, you have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle New York set. You had a plane of existence of New York appear 3 times in the last, God knows, 2 years. Meanwhile, I'm finally getting Lauren Eclipse, and I couldn't care for it. I'll pick up some art prints. Like, if Ryan Reynolds is doing some pieces of art, I will probably pick it up and put it on my wall somewhere, because that was what I care about. Man, that's rough. Anyway, I hope this made sense to you, or if not, please leave a comment and hopefully I can explain in further detail. Love to hear other people's thoughts on this. Otherwise, thank you so much. I'll see you sometime. Bye.